how you became inspired to found this organization, Police Against the New World Order, and what time was that?
Well, I was in law enforcement for many years, and I served in the sixth largest city in the United States, Alex, the Phoenix Police Department. And I was a little older when I went into law enforcement. I'd been in the military during the Vietnam War. And when I went into law enforcement, I was 32 years of age instead of 20, like most of my fellow recruit class members. When we went to the police academy, I was called the old man at 32 because all of them were 20 and 21 years of age. And I began to see things that disturbed me very much, Alex, when I went through the police academy, and also hear things from the superiors as they talked to these young people who, to me, had very little, if no, life experience at 20 and 21 years of age. I'd been in the military since 17 years of age and had experienced a lot of things, been in business for a number of years before I went into law enforcement. And I heard the superiors come in and say things to us recruits that were not true. And I've always tried to do my best to learn my profession and do the best I can. I'm not the most brilliant man on the block. I only have 2 years of college, no degrees, and so I've always had to work a little harder.
I was watching one of your videos, Time to Get Involved, last night, and you were talking about how they reacted to the things that you were saying once you came out about the New World Order or police officers that didn't know about the U.S. Constitution and things like national sovereignty.
I heard things that were not true, and I just dismissed them as that I was the new kid on the block and wanted to become a good police officer. And so after 17 weeks, I went onto the streets of Phoenix, and immediately I began to realize that we were not trained to be the servants and protectors of the people as much as we were trained to be the servants and the protectors of the system from the people. And this disturbed me, but I applied myself for the first 3 years, worked in the high crime area of South Phoenix, and became the most highly decorated officer in the history of Phoenix, Arizona, with God's blessing, because I'm not that cool and not that great a guy, but it just happened. And so when I was at the top of my career, most highly decorated officer, I began to be deeply concerned about us violating our oaths as police officers that we took to defend the Constitution, protect the people's rights and property and so forth, and that we were given orders quite often that were unconstitutional, violated people's rights, or immoral, and sometimes unlawful. And so as my career was going so well, I began to speak out and talk to fellow officers about they should read the Constitution and understand their oath, because then they could say no to orders that were unconstitutional and violated their oath, and orders that were immoral and unlawful. And when I did that, my career potential ended, Alex. I became ostracized, and soon after that, I was not only the most highly awarded officer, highly decorated, but I became the most fired officer for speaking out about unconstitutional things we were doing to fellow officers and asking them to say no to immoral and unlawful orders. And so I became pretty unpopular, and that started me along the educational track to try to find out what was really going on in the country. And I started my Aid and Abet Police Military newsletter for police and military on constitutional issues, where we discussed these things. And I found a good audience out there. A lot of police officers and soldiers are as concerned about these immoral and lawful orders and violations of, for military, violations of the UCMJ, military justice, the Code of Military Justice, and police officers violating their oaths of office to defend the Constitution, protect people's rights. And so that's how I got started. I saw it. It was right there before me. I actually participated in some of these things when I first got started, until I finally, as a Christian police officer, said, I just can't do this anymore, and I've got to stop, and I've got to share my thoughts and feelings with fellow officers. And so that's answer your question as to how I got started.
Jack, one thing that disturbs me about the New World Order is not just the inter passe comitatus and the merging of the police and the military, but I don't always think it's a good thing for them to overemphasize the bad officers and never give credit to the good officers. And I see the way that they are crafting things with Cops Television and Court TV and Fox News, this absolute fear of your local police officers. Some of that's rationalized. We cover a lot of the police state here. But I think, it's really shifted into a us versus them, citizen, American, we the people versus the police officer. I don't see that as a good thing at all.
Well, it's actually training in the police academy. When I was in the police academy in 1976, Alex, superiors came in and brainwashed the young people. They couldn't brainwash me, but the young people had no knowledge, very little knowledge of things that were important. And so they would come in and say things like this, and here's a direct quote: "You are no longer citizens any longer. You are police officers raised on a higher level above the citizens to better supervise them for their own good." And that shocked me, basically, at 32 years of age, because I didn't give up my citizenship when I became a police officer like they just told us. And then they said things like this, and I quote once again, "You cannot trust the citizens out there. You can't trust them to come to your aid if you ever need help. You can only trust fellow officers." So what I saw in the 17 weeks in the major police academy in the United States was that they were purposely separating the people, the police officers, psychologically from the people. And of course I understand it today, because in the police academy we were told over and over, one day you're going to be asked to do things, Alex, that you are police officers that you won't want to do, you won't like to do, but if you don't do those things when you're ordered to do them, society will collapse. And all of us wondered, what are those things we're going to be asked to do we won't like to do and won't want to do? Well, we certainly know today that they've divided the police officers psychologically from the public, and we are now your supervisors and not your servants anymore. And we've been taught that the system, the government system, is God, and it has to be protected at all costs or freedom will fall. That's what police officers are taught. So when a citizen attacks the system in any way, if you sue the police department or anything like that, we circle the wagons and we will write fictitious police reports. We'll get on the witness stand and lie to protect the city from suit, because we're taught that the system is God, and if the system falls, all of us will lose our freedoms in America. So what you see happening is actually training, Alex, sad to say, but in the major cities anyway, that this is actually training that goes forward.
Just real quick on this question, how much has your definition or understanding of the global elite and the New World Order changed since you first began to look at it and write your publications to now, 2006?
Well, it's really solidified, because I now have just, oh my goodness gracious, hundreds and hundreds of pounds of books and documents that I've dug out over my police career. As a police investigator, I also use those techniques on finding out who the bad guys were in society. And so it's solidified, because I now can prove everything we say through Aid and Abet Police Military Newsletter about this New World Order. And I use the quotes of presidents, prime ministers, Supreme Court justices, politicians like Barry Goldwater and others that have talked about this world conspiracy, and that Rush Limbaugh calls a kooks club. Part of his kook club is anybody believes in the world conspiracy. But as you've seen, Alex, there's many, many quotes of presidents, prime ministers, Supreme Court justices, and on, that believe and have stated there is a world conspiracy.
Absolutely. It is
Yeah.
hidden in plain sight. You know, Jack, for the next 5 to 10 minutes as we wrap this up, let's get into the definition from your research and the many books that you've read on the New World Order and how it operates today. We'll go ahead and start with ending national sovereignty. We're dealing with a situation where they're selling the ports right now, and many Americans don't understand that certain land, as long as we're going to be Americans and the United States, needs to belong to us, not a foreign corporation. That's not about the race or religion. It's the fact that these conglomerate international corporations are going to be owning the ports.
Well, that's true. We're going into internationalism, and the American people who have not studied history, for example, read the quotes of the head of the Ford Foundation, Rowan Gaither, in 1954, that said that his duty was to use their grant-making powers at the Ford Foundation and their money to lower the standard of living in the United States so we could be merged with the rest of the world. And so the outsourcing of all of our manufacturing and industry jobs to where we only have the $6 and $8 an hour jobs instead of the 20, 30, 50 an hour jobs is bringing us down. The importation of millions and millions of illegal aliens into the country through the 2,000-mile open border by the Bush and the Vicente Fox crime families is all on purpose to bring America down. And everything that they do is to level us with third world nations in this country and sell all of our any corporations left to foreign corporations, and so we will be a slave society, and that's the goal, that there will be no sovereignty in America in the near future. If the FTAA passes, as you know, Alex, it's over, because we will then be part of the tri-regional system of the world, which involves the American, well, let's go to the European Union first. That's the first part of the tri-regional world government system that's already set up. And then we have the Pacific Rim nations that are going under that regional system where they won't have national sovereignty, the countries. And America, through the FTAA, NAFTA, and GATT and all, is going under a regional system where we will not have boundaries. We will not have borders. For America, we'll be part of the third region. And when the third region is finished being set up and everybody has the same, in other words, everybody is poor, then there will only be the super rich and the super poor, no middle class. Then we can be merged together in this slave Antichrist world government system that they're setting up. So that's what's going on, and our duty is to keep fighting the enemies of God and liberty, and that's what we do here at our two police and military associations daily, about 16 hours a day.
There are a number of articles, Jack, that have come out recently over the past few weeks. They've been coming out for a long time. You know, the whole story about Rex 84, the contingency center program. Well, a lot of those stories are coming out with the new type of Rex 84. Pentagon, you know, reported last week they're going to get another 330 some million dollars to build camps. We call them camps, they call them contingency centers, relocation centers, right. And they have like 1,000 pretexts for why they want to use these. Why do you think those camps are there, Jack?
Well, I know, because we have a military organization, police and military organization, and we've had many military people tell us that they have been working on setting up mock prison camps here in the United States. We had a lieutenant contact us a couple years ago and told us that he was training his soldiers, U.S. soldiers, back in the woods of Pennsylvania. They had set up a mock prison camp, and they were told that these camps would be here in America. Of all things, this will make you laugh, Alex, that they were going to be, the reason they were setting up these prison camps and learning how to run them in America is because they were setting up all these detainment centers to go round up all the illegal aliens and put them in these camps. And so he said he knew that was a lie. And so we've had a lot of contact with our military people that have worked on these plans for setting up these concentration camps in America that are being set up for you and me, Alex, and all those that love God and freedom and don't want to go along with this Antichrist world government system.
Jack, just a few more questions. One of them is, how did you respond initially after September 11, 2001, as the mainstream media, the evilarchy, the mind controllers, decided to tell all Americans that this act was committed by a bunch of cavemen, basically, living in Afghanistan.
Well, it was the center of a lot of talk here because, of course, we know the history of our government and other governments causing terrorist acts to push us into World War I, World War II, the Vietnam War, Korea. All of these were preceded by some alleged terrorist act, blowing things up to prepare the American people mentally to accept what the government wanted us to do. And, of course, so we were very suspicious, and within just days, we began to get information from police investigators and from others in the field of investigations, metallurgists and all these type people that said it was impossible to happen what happened with the World Trade Center. And we heard from pilots, military pilots, that said a plane could not have hit the Pentagon because when a plane flies that low to the ground at that speed, there's a air buffet that comes off the ground that doesn't allow you to control the plane that close to the ground, and it throws you off course and bounces you up and down to where you can't hit anything.
Yeah, and I mean, the entire media, internet, mainstream and alternative is literally flooded with researchers, authors, investigators, scientists that have gone in and looked at the implosions, which really it was what happened to the buildings, as most people know by now.
Blown up from inside.
And hidden in plain sight. You know, where do you see our nation now, then? In the next 6 to 7 years? I'm talking, say, 2012.
Well, I come from a different view than maybe some of your listeners, I'm sure, because I'm a Christian retired police officer, and I know that God said as long as He were in control of our country and He was our Lord, He would protect America as He did throughout biblical history to any nation and His people. But when we throw God out of a nation, He allows oppressors to come in and enslave the people. And we have allowed, as Christians, to have God thrown out of this nation. We're still doing it. The last vestiges of God are leaving because we sit back and think we're getting out the heaven out of here next week, and we're not involved in occupying until He returns again. So God is bringing oppression upon America. And unless we get back to the Lord and back into His holy word, under 2 Chronicles 7:14, it's going down, brother, and it's going down real quick. And there's nothing we can do to stop it, although we're commanded by God to try. You know, God didn't say we had to win against His enemies. We just have to be on the battlefield, constantly striving to win against His enemies until His return. So that's the answer from this old Christian cop.
How many other Christians out there, Christian police officers, I guess in that respect then, pertaining to your background, your belief system, are part of your organization today? How much has it grown or expanded?
Well, we have people, police and soldiers of all races, all religions, involved that love God and freedom, and they're working with us even though they don't believe the same religiously or politically sometimes. Even we've got liberals working with us because they want to save freedom for their own children and grandchildren and themselves, and so we're quite an assortment. But we do have a lot of Christian police officers and soldiers in our association.
Yeah, you know, what was fascinating about you, Jack McLamb, is you're one of the guys Alex Jones was listening to back in the heyday before he got started. And but, you know, yeah, there was a lot of great information. I'm glad you were able to make it. Best regards to your wife. What is going on in that situation?
Well, she's just gone through her cancer treatment, and she's, as you know, 22 years in the U.S. Army as a first sergeant, went to the Gulf War and got poisoned over there by our government with the horrible anthrax shots and the BP pills and the depleted uranium, came back, almost died. But she made it through that with God's blessing, and then got cancer, which 60% of our first Gulf War warriors have gotten, and she's just made it through that by the grace of God, and she's healing up. So we're praying that she's been healed, and we're going to go forward from there. So her job, now that she's disabled from the military after 22 years, is to help disabled American veterans from the first Gulf War and the second Gulf War that are coming back in great numbers now because of depleted uranium and so forth that they're being poisoned with.
Uh-huh.
So she's doing pretty good.
Okay. Jack, thanks for being on the show. At short notice, I'm glad we were able to connect and reconnect after that little technical glitch.
Okay, Alex. Well, listen, thanks for all you're doing for America, and God bless you, brother.